Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny, and today we're going to be talking about a type of protagonist that I have come to love in my most recent reads. There has been a theme in some reads that I have read within the past year that I have noticed that I've really enjoyed, and that is having an older female protagonist. So by older, I mean probably over 50. I have really enjoyed if they are 60 or above, and I'm going to talk you through some books that fit this mold and why I have enjoyed these perspectives and what books I have on my TBR to continue the trend. But I'm also asking you, so this is a call to arms for you guys, to scour the bookiverse and find some more books for me that I can add to my TBR that have this common theme. This is a theme I have really come to enjoy, not only because of the difference in perspective, but also it's something that I haven't seen a lot of before. So it's not something that I'm used to reading about. And I've really enjoyed some sassy old ladies not putting up with crap. I have just really enjoyed the limelight not being on a typical protagonist. I've enjoyed the differences there. We will start with the books that I have read recently that do have an older female protagonist. And I'm going to start with the one that probably least fits this mold, although I still do think that it is edging on the territory, and that is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi. The reason I say that this book may not fit the mold is because I'm not sure exactly how old Amina is. I know that she's middle-aged. I know that she has a daughter and a mother that's living with her, but I'm not sure that she is above 50 and above 60. Like, I'm pretty sure she's probably younger than that. My guess would be that she's in her 40s or 50s, and I don't think that this book specifically states it, and I'm not gonna go through the entire story to try and figure out how old she is, but I still think that the storyline does fit the theme. If you've never heard of The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi, I do highly recommend this book. It's why it's part of my collection. I rated this 5 stars. You follow a retired pirate. So she is retired from the pirate scene. She lives with her daughter and her mother kind of off the beaten path, and she wants a better life for them. She wants them to be safe, and so she has kind of given up her pirate ways. And I can't remember how long she has been retired. It's been quite a long, it's been a minute, because her entire crew has separated their own ways. They have their own lives now, and someone comes to her with something that has happened, and someone has been kidnapped that she has, I don't want to say relation with, but a companion of hers knows, and this person is asking Amina for help. Essentially, she wants her to put the crew back together and go and save this person. And so Amina goes, and we see her on this adventure with her old crew. And part of the thing I really enjoyed about this book was there is a podcast feel. It's not a podcast, but someone is recording her thoughts, and so you have this kind of back and forth breaking of the fourth wall when she's talking to him and telling her own story, which I thought was really unique. But to go back to the point of this video, I really enjoyed how this book pinpointed the reasons for her leaving, her responsibilities that she has now, but also the difficulties that she has now that she is older and not being someone who is in the prime of her life, which is something that I also enjoyed about The Kings of the Wild. I don't know, I enjoyed the character having to not only face the trials of this crazy world that they're in and the conflict that is in this specific book, but I also appreciate them having to face their own humanity and how to combat age. And yeah, I've enjoyed that with this book. Next is a book I don't own, but I would like to, and that is Death in Her Hands. And I can't remember how old this protagonist was or is either, but I know that she is elderly just because of some of the premise of the book. So this is a book I would not recommend to a lot of people because it is odd and it's very meandering. There isn't really a point, but there kind of is. You follow the main character. I'm not going to remember her name, but she goes for a walk in the woods and she finds a note. And this note essentially is saying that there has been a death and you're never going to find her body and you're never going to figure out who killed her. And this elderly lady who finds this note, throughout the story, you are following her processing this note and what it means. And what I really enjoyed about this particular story was being in the main character's head, and there is this constant question from her of whether or not this note is really sinister. She is essentially going through and describing to you what she believes happened and why this note ended up in her woods. And she also interacts with you in a way that she's also interacting with the world around her, with all of these different characters that come into play and how they could potentially have had an impact on this note that she found in the woods. And you are in her head, but you're also thinking, like, did these things really happen? And so there's also that potentially like unreliable narrator, but you're not quite sure if the things that she is thinking are real. But there's also a question of, is this a senile woman who has made up a delusion in her head? Once again, the unreliable narrator aspect. Or is this someone who actually has figured out something more sinister? And yeah, I enjoyed the thought process that this woman goes through, and I enjoyed the interactions that she has with the world around her while she is having these thoughts in her head. It's a very trippy book. And like I said, there's not a lot of point to it. So if you're looking for a plot-driven book or a book that has answers in the end, probably not this book for you, but I really did enjoy her perspective. Next, we have Mary by Nat Cassidy. And I've talked about this book a lot on my channel, but I'll talk about it again if you haven't heard of Mary. With Mary, you follow a character whose name is Mary, who is a premenopausal woman. I can't remember exactly how old she is. I just remember her being premenopausal because it is part of the storyline. You do get to follow her and her interactions with her doctors and having to deal with her own aging. And she ends up having some visions or some hallucinations, I guess. And every time she looks at another woman, she sees the woman age and decay. And it's horrific. And so she has some really hard times hanging out with people. She starts to become kind of reclusive, but then she also has some visions of some pretty gruesome murders. And she doesn't know whether or not they're real or what's causing them, which is why she ends up going to the doctor. She ends up going back home to her hometown, and she does find out, and this is like very early on in the storyline, but she finds out that the women that are in these murder scenes are real. And so she questions like why she's having these visions and what's going on with that. And so yeah, you have to follow her trying to figure out why she's having these visions, but also having to figure out herself and who she is, who she wants to be. And I just freaking love this book. I plan on rereading this in October. I loved Mary's perspective. I love the character arc that she has of being a very timid person to growing into really accepting herself. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. Nat Cassidy, I've talked about this author before, is an author I will continue to pick up because he writes women very well. The next book is The September House. So this is a book, once again, I've talked about a lot on my channel, and this is another one that I do want to reread in October. This, you follow a main character named Margaret and her husband. And she is the main, or she is the only protagonist. I don't think that we switch back and forth. I think it's only her POV. But she's retirement age, and they have bought this Victorian home, and they've gotten it for a steal. But turns out the reason they got it for a steal is because the house is haunted. And she refuses to move out because it's her dream home, and she doesn't care if there are a whole bunch of ghosties and things walking around. She's going to enjoy her retirement, and she's going to live in this house. And I frickin' love Margaret. She is amazing. I want to be friends with her. And the storyline behind September House in general, why this house is haunted, and the characters that come into play with that storyline and how Margaret interacts with them, I really enjoyed. The last book that I've read recently that involves an elderly female protagonist is The Remarkable Retirement of Edna Fisher, which I know I've talked about this a lot recently, so I won't talk about it at length, but I will tell you that this does have an 83-year-old protagonist who is currently living in a magic-free nursing home. Even though the world does have magic, the world has a whole bunch of fantastical creatures as well, trolls, elves, dwarves, you name it, and it's in this, as well as dragons, which you can see in the picture. And she is told that she is going to be the chosen one, and she has to figure out a way to save her kingdom. And I absolutely love Edna Fisher. She is a sassy old lady who does not put up with crap, and the band of characters that she puts together, she is the glue that keeps her friends, kind of keeps them together, but also helps them grow along the way, and it helps her as well. She has a story of loss. At the very beginning of the story, you do learn that she has lost her son, and so that plays a part in the story as well. And I absolutely love this book. Not only was Edna great, but you also, like I said, have this wonderful cast of side characters that help her along her journey. And I do think that that's probably one of the reasons that this book stands out to me, is because we have the Chosen One character. And I know that like a lot of the Chosen One stories do have side characters that help them, but I liked the fact that Edna in this particular story was having to reach out because of her inability to do certain things because of her age, which once again fits in with the theme of the rest of these books. I like having that conflict and having someone having to combat their humanity. I think that that's an amazing story element. It's something that's very, very hard to combat because aging is something we all do, and there is a point in time where you can't do certain things, and that's just the way of life. And so having to figure out how to go around certain obstacles was very interesting to see from Edna's perspective. So with that, I'm going to just briefly go through some books that I have on my TBR that I think have older female protagonists. I don't have confirmation on a lot of these because it's not like in the synopsis they specifically say how old these women are. I'm just assuming. So I know that A Quiet Life in the Country, which is like a murder mystery, and I think it involves two women who move out to the countryside to kind of get away from things. I know the main character is a widow and her friend is retired. And so I'm assuming that they are older women. I don't know, elderly is probably not the way I would describe them, but I'm hoping that maybe like 50 plus. I can't be sure, but I do think it sounds really cute and kind of a cozy mystery read. The next is City of Blades, which is the second book in the, I think it's Divine Cities series, but the first book was The City of Stairs, and there is a character in City of Stairs that the second book follows that is supposed to be an older protagonist, and because it's the second book in a series, I'm not going to give you a synopsis of this book, but supposedly this book also follows an older female protagonist. Next we have The Fury of Gods, and this one kind of fits the narrative. The Fury of Gods is the third book in the Bloodsworn Saga series that I have over here, and Orca is a main character in that series, and Orca is probably in her mid-40s would be my guess, and she's a badass, and I like to follow her. Once again, since it's the third book in a series, I'm not going to tell you much about the actual synopsis, but it's a Nordic high epic fantasy, and it's been fantastic so far, so I can't wait to see kind of what Orca does next. And then last on my list, and I literally Googled, or I went on Reddit and looked up older female protagonist, and Live Ship Traders popped up, which is a book that's on my TBR. It's Robin Hobb series, and it is the next Robin Hobb series that I need to get to. Ship of Magic, I think, is the first book in the trilogy, and so I have no idea. I don't even know the synopsis for that series. I just know that it is something that has been on my radar for a while. So if it has an older female protagonist, That's just a perk. So once again, if you guys have recommendations where you've seen 50-plus-year-old female protagonists, preferably I would even go older than that, because I don't know, I just love like the crotchety old grandma. I love those vibes. And so if you guys do have recommendations for me in really any genre, but my primary would be fantasy and horror that I'm looking for, because those are the ones that I've enjoyed so far. But list them in the comments down below if you got recommendations for me, because I would love to check out some more elderly female protagonists. Have you guys read any recently that you really enjoyed? I'd also like to talk about that. Have there been any tropes or themes that you have seen in your reading? Not necessarily about the protagonist, but maybe there is a specific type of setting that you've found that you really enjoy in your books, or maybe there is a specific type of twist that you've really enjoyed in your books. I would love to chat with you guys about that as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.